In this session, I am going to cover withholding tax end user part. So first of all, we'll post an invoice and we'll see how SAP is going to deduct TDS. TDS deduction is happening perfect or not. So here, okay, so if vendor is sending, let's suppose vendor is sending any invoices, and if we post this invoice in SAP, then what is the accounting entry which is going to take place here? Or purchase account is going to debit and vendor account will be going to be credited. This accounting entry will take place. Say for example, if it is 1000 rupees, 1000 rupees. Now what government says that whenever we purchase any sort of services which falls under whatever this TDS sections they have given, we need to deduct certain tax. Now this tax is not like at the time of payment we are going to deduct. This tax we have to deduct at the time of invoices itself. Government says whether you are going to make payment to vendor after 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, it doesn't matter. I need every month whatever TDS deduction is there, that you have to make payment. Now what will happen here? So when we receive invoices, purchase account 1000, vendor account credited 1000. But generally if we go for TDS deduction, then what will happen? Vendor is going to be 10% TDS. Then what will happen? Then in that vendor will have only 900 and 100 rupees TDS we are going to deduct. TDS will be deducted and that is also credit. So this 100 rupees TDS we have deducted and this should be the accounting entry. Now we'll do one thing. FB60 will post a transaction and then we'll see whether it's working fine or not. So this is your company code, sorry, vendor account, guys. $1,000. Any expense GL we can give here, and here also 1000, and then press enter. So what system is saying? Vendor, this is subject to withholding tax. If you click on withholding tax, our withholding tax is appearing here, whichever we have assigned to the vendor master. And for more detail, click on simulate and let's see the accounting entry, whether system is able to deduct the withholding tax in the sense TDS or not. Okay, so press enter to ignore this. Now see here, so expense account is getting debited with 1000, that's okay. But vendor is getting credited with 900 and TDS payable is going to be credited with 100. It means whatever invoice we have received from vendor, on that like TDS we have charged 10%. So only vendor is, we are liable to pay only 900 to the vendor account, and remaining 100 rupees whatever we have deducted as a TDS, that we are going to pay to the respective department. So it means here the calculation is happening perfectly. Its perfect calculation is happening here. Now, the major thing which I want to make you guys understand is whenever you go for interview, this is a simple calculation till here everybody are going to live. Now let's suppose this vendor, it could be anything, XYZ Limited, involved in lots of social activity. Like there are lots of organizations, there are lots of companies who has, like giving free educations, running certain colleges, running certain hospitals, and doing lots of other activity, social activity. Now what will happen, even government also wants to reward those kind of organizations, or else whatever the reasons are there. Now what will happen here, this XYZ Limited is also, let's suppose, participated in this kind of things and all. Government says that okay, now what reward they will give, it's not like that they are going to offer some money. Government says okay, now whatever tax you are paying, this 100 rupees is paid by whom? This 100 is paid by XYZ Limited, because we as a Tata Motor, we are just a medium. We have deducted this tax on behalf of government, but who is the payer? The payer is vendor itself, XYZ. So government says that whatever tax you are going to pay right now, whatever tax you are paying right now, I will give you 40% exemption. 40% exemption. Government says that I will give you 40% exemption. So guys, how much tax XYZ Limited is going to pay? In this scenario, how much tax XYZ Limited is going to pay, how much TDS we have to deduct, and how much vendor account is going to be credited with how much amount? Let me know your understanding. The government has given 40% exemption, then what should be the accounting entry? Then in that case, it means TDS payable will be less. So what is your understanding in this case? Okay, other people?
Vendor is 60 rupees and TDS 40 rupees.
Okay, good. So here what will happen, 40% exemption means government says that 40% you are not going to pay. So how much vendor is going to pay? 60%, it means 60 rupees. So how much here? It is 940. This is going to be 940. Okay. So this exemption 40% we have given, it means 60 rupees vendor is going to make payment, and remaining 940 rupees will be payable to the vendor.
So, sir, I have one doubt.
Yeah.
So when we are payment to the tax, so that is our expenditure. Actually, it will be debited. We have to write the purchase account data plus TDS account data to vendor account. Vendor received the tax from our side. On TM, our company paying to the vendor. Vendor payment to the government.
What about other guys? Yeah, just suggest me whatever he's telling is right. TDS
Have
for our expenses.
our Tata Motor payment to the tax to the vendor paying to the government. So it is an our purchasing time, our expenditure. When we are sale, that time we receive the tax from the purchaser. So that is our income.
No, yeah, you're confused. See, I'll tell you. Even though I'm not accounting guy, but still. See, even though we have deduct this 60 rupees, forget about this exemption right now. Let's suppose 10% tax. So 100 rupees we have deducted and 900 we have to make payment. So now this 100 rupees deduction is there. Let's suppose 1000 rupees worth of invoices we have received from vendor. So this 1000 rupees is just your expense is getting debited. Now vendor is getting credited with 900. Why? Because see, we have to make only 900 payment to the vendor account, because we have to deduct, while payment we have to deduct certain taxes also on this whatever this vendor amount is there, and vendor is nothing but it's account payable. Payable is nothing but your liability. So if anything increase in liability is going to be credited. And TDS, whatever we have deducted, this tax we have deducted on behalf of government. So it is not our amount. This is not your amount. If you have deducted on behalf of government. So this is a kind of liability which we must have to pay to the government account at the end of the month. Whatever we have deducted, it's not like we are going to keep in our pocket. Okay, so if you are going to keep in your pocket, that could be your revenue, that could be your asset or whatever it is. But if we have to make payment, it means we are liable to make payment at the end of the month. So TDS, whatever the TDS we are deducting, that is a liability for every company. It's not the expenses. Okay, so that is what this accounting entry will take place. Purchase account data 1000 rupees, vendor account 900, TDS is going to be, yes, vendor and TDS both are liability itself. Now, so this accounting entry is taking place. Okay. Now I was just explaining about scenario that government has given 40% exemption. Government has given 40% exemption to this XYZ Limited. It means our vendor. Now what will happen? So XYZ Limited will come back to Tata Motor and saying that next time onwards never deduct 100 rupees TDS. They will say that we are having 40% exemption certificate. They will send a scan copy of exemption certificate and they'll say that next time onwards, whenever you are going to post any invoices received from XYZ Limited, then I need my 40% exemption because I am having 40% exemption certificate from government. It means whatever tax you are going to deduct, in that you reduce 40% first, deduct 40%, and whatever remaining 60% is there, that only you can charge. It means only 60 rupees we can charge. So whatever remaining 40 rupees is there, that is going to be payable to the vendor. So now see here, earlier vendor used to receive 900 rupees itself. Now government has given exemption, so their increase, whatever their receivable is there, that is going to be increased. So now here, how this is the question people will ask, that let's suppose if the vendor is having 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, this one, if vendor is having this much exemption, then what we have to do? I'll tell you guys, 99% of the people says that we need to create a new tax code with those percentages. Okay, 99% of the people will say that we need to create the a new tax code with this amount. It means right now 60 rupees means 60 rupees means, let's suppose only 6% we are charging. So they will say that instead of 10% we'll create another tax code with 6%. But this is not the solution, because this TDS exemption, whatever exemption is there, that is for 1 year itself. Some validity will be there. Whenever the government give any exemption, certain validity will be there, that this exemption certificate is valid from, let's suppose, 01/01/2017 to 31st December 2000, let's suppose 17. So here I am using calendar year, because for our company code I have used calendar year itself. So this validity government has given, it means this 40% exemption is going to be valid till 1 year itself. So if you have created any new tax code with 6%, it's okay, vendor will be deducted, 6% tax will be deducted. But next year, if the government is going to revise this from 40% to 50%, the government says that now I'm going to give you exemption of 50%, then once again we have to create. If government says 55%, then once again we have to create. Next year, if the government says 70% exemption, once again we have to create. So likewise, how many tax code are we going to create? So creation of new tax code is not a solution. The solution is already given by SAP. What is the solution? We are not going to create any new tax code. The tax code will be there as it is. Okay. I said like 10%. We have created one tax code which deduct 10%. We are having a vendor A. We are having vendor B, C, D, E, F. Now this, everybody's are paying 10%. Everybody's are eligible for this 10%, 10%. Let's suppose everybody's are coming under this slab itself, 10%, 10%. Okay. So it's okay now. Now this C got 40% exemption 40% exemption certificate. C got 40% exemption certificate. So what will happen in this case? If C got 40% exemption certificates, remaining other people are having 10%. So whatever 10% tax code I have created, this 10% I have assigned with all vendors, with all 5 vendors. Now 40% exemption certificate means 40% exemption certificate means 60%. What is the 40% of 10? It means only 6% C is going to make payment. 6 is going to make payment of TDS. How much percent? 6%. Because 40% exemption this vendor C got. So if you say that we are going to create a new tax code, let's suppose some more guy got a different percentage of exemption, then once again we have to create. Next year this is going to be revised and government says 50%. It means we have to create another tax code of 5%. So this is not the solution. If anybody get the exemption, the tax code will be same. There is no any change in tax code. What we are going to give, we are going to maintain this exemption percentage in vendor master. Guys, keep in your mind, if somebody asks, like, let's suppose I am having a vendor and vendor is having like 50% or 40% exemption certificate. So as a consultant, what you are going to suggest to your end user? So you have to say it's pretty simple. Whatever exemption certificates are there, those details we need to maintain in vendor master, including the exemption percentage. And once we maintain, then system is going to adjust the calculation automatically based on the input we have given to vendor master. I'll show you guys practically. It's very, very, very easy to understand. Okay. I'll show you guys practically and it's very easy to understand. Earlier I shown you here 40% exemption we are going to maintain, and this accounting entry is supposed to take place because this is the correct accounting entry. So now I know this might have got expired, so I'll have to log in once again. So let me log in. Okay, so the first one I have shown you guys like how to post vendor invoice I simply simulated, I was not able to save it. I'll do one thing, I'll just save it. I'll show you once again the previously whichever I have posted here, invoice worth of 1000 rupees, give an expense GL here also 1000, and if you click on simulate, then it is going to show you the accounting entry. It means 10% a perfect deduction is happening here. The accounting entry is also correct. Post this. Okay, sign private limited, that is our vendor. Now what will happen? Now the scenario got changed. Now the same. Okay, there are two errors, guys. Two error will appear. What are those error? I'll let you know. PAN is not available. PAN is not available means for every vendor, because nowadays, like whenever we are going to deduct TDS and all, then what will happen? Government says like 10% with PAN card, in the sense with PAN number 10%, without PAN number 20%. So nowadays for every vendor and everybody it become mandatory and all. So system is throwing error that PAN is not available. What is this? How the PAN is not available? Let me create one more screen, and then xk03, xk02, and then you have to give your vendor number and click on address field itself and press enter. So in vendor master we have to maintain the PAN details. Okay, PAN number we have to maintain. Now what will happen? See here, I am getting SIN details. Okay, for you guys, when you guys are going to log in, you won't be getting this details, SIN details. Okay, what you are going to get? Click on withholding tax. I have clicked on this one and I am going to maintain a PAN number here. Come back and save it. So I have maintained the PAN detail here, but you guys will not have the SIN detail itself, so you won't be able to maintain the PAN. So what you have to do to bring this SIN details, this what you have to do to bring this SIN details here, I'll just let you know. You need to use a transaction code OMT3E. It's a bit unique transaction code, OMT3E, and press enter. Once you press enter, then here you need to click on user screen reference. Double click on user screen reference filter, and then you need to click on new entry and give your user ID here. Whatever your user ID is there, like let's suppose 41 user, let's suppose 91. If this is your user ID, give this user ID here. Now this user ID does not exist because this user ID is not created. So this user ID doesn't mean that any user ID you have to give. Your user ID. You can see here, see my user ID is 99 user 30. So this 99 user 30 already I have given. Press enter and see an entry already exists with the same key. So I cannot give. So you guys has to give your user ID here, and once you give user ID, press enter, and then you can save this. Save the transaction. Then what will happen? Then if you do this, then only SIN details field will be visible here in vendor master. And then once you come here, click on SIN details, and then in that withholding tax, and give any PAN number. Any PAN number you can give here and save it. So now once you save, the first error got solved. Now press enter and then once again click on simulate. Now second, press enter once again. One more error will appear, guys. one more error will appear, and for that I'll just mention that error for you guys. First time it will appear, I'll mention in the configuration document. I'll share a configuration document also, because this, I think, watching the video and all, uh, it won't be that much easy to practice. So I'll share the configuration document. In that, whatever errors are going to take place, those I'll mention, and I'll mention the solution also, what I'm going to do. It's pretty simple, nothing is there. So now what I have done, now I'm going to post this simple entry. Could not determine the C, this error I was talking about. Could not determine the year for TDS certificate number range. System is having year identification error. Now the thing is like, this error is not coming from your side, that is coming from MM side. Now in real time, what happened, simultaneously configuration will going on. FI is also doing their part, MM is also doing their part, SD is also doing their part, and all module are closely integrated. So if anything, sometime what is happening, if some entry or some configuration is missing from MM side or SD side also, there will be certain cases where you will be getting error. So this is also one example here. Could not determine year for TDS certificate number range. So what we have to do, one more setting I'll let you know. For this we are going to use path, SPRO. Click on reference IMG, and then here you need to click on here you need to click on logistic general here. Okay, so after logistic general, one more thing we have to do, come down and we have to select tax on goods movement. See, where is the tax on goods movement? It's here. Okay, logistic is nothing but the part of MM. Click on India, expand this one, and then click on basic setting, and then maintain company code. We have to click on maintain company code. What is the logic behind? I am not going to explain, since it is not your part, but as I said, this is integrated things. Now here, since MM consultant is not there, so we cannot tell them that you do this configuration, we have to do this. Okay, now you need to click on for new entry, and T TM04, and give your first month whatever you want. If you follow December, Jan to December, January. If you follow this one, non-accounting April, anything you can give here. I don't know which one we are following, so I've given January itself. I think we are following the calendar year, so I've given January. So this setting we have to do, that's it. Once you do the setting, once again come on FB60 here. Now it is showing in gray mode because second error has taken place. Press enter. So once you press enter, click on simulate, press enter, and then click on post. And now let's see whether the posting is possible or not. I think it should be posted because these two errors take place initially. See, the document got posted. we have posted this document 1044. This was a simple entry where simply 10% TDS deduction is going on. Now what I said about 40% exemption or 60% exemption or whatever exemption is there. So 40% exemption itself, let's just assume 40% exemption. So if vendor is having any sort of exemption, what we are going to do, we have to mention that exemption details in vendor master, where give the vendor master and click here on withholding tax tab and press enter. So here, if you press enter, this tax code, everything we have assigned here, and based on this, system was calculating tax 10%. Now since vendor is having exemption certificate, so what we are going to do, we are going to specify those exemption details here. Okay, now here withholding tax ID, any ID you can give, or is exemption number itself, don't give ID and all, exemption number from here onwards. Generally exemption number means whenever government is releasing any certificate, exemption certificate to any vendor, on that certain number will be there. So you can specify any number as an exemption number, and then here exemption percentage, how much percent government has given, how much exemption percentage are there, 40%. So I've given 40. Now what is this exemption reason, why government has given this exemption? So you can choose anyone. The reason is, let's suppose let's suppose it is a semi-government organization. So I've selected SG. Exempted from, this exemption is eligible, like what is the eligibility, in the sense like what is the validity date for this exemption, 40%, 1 year, 2 year, 4 years. So generally it will be like 1 year itself, annual basis revision will take place. Then press enter and save it. So what we have given, we have given the exemption details. So this time onwards, what we have instructed to the system, that whenever we post any TDS for this particular vendor, then system is going to deduct tax with the rate of 10% itself. Tax is going to be deducted with the 10% itself, but we have added one more condition, that in that 10%, 40% exemption supposed to be there. In that 10%, 40% exemption supposed to be there. So vendor is going to pay only 6% tax, 6% tax. So now we'll see how. Once again going to make payment, once again going to post invoice for same vendor. So amount I have posted, amount I have given 1000, GL just give expense GL. Okay, so here I have given amount, I have given 1000, press enter and then click on simulate. Now let's see whether we are going to go get this exemption or not. See guys, now whatever accounting entry I said, those accounting entry is appearing here. It means exemption we are able to get. Just save it. Okay, so once we save, our transactions are getting updated somewhere in some GL account. Now, so in this withholding tax session is going to be finished here itself. Whatever the scenarios are there that I have covered, and with including configuration parts and all, so that is going to be finished here. Okay, withholding tax is finished now.